Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and it's just one of my off-the-top things. Just something I feel like sitting down and talking about. I saw a lot of people are worried about, NXT, AEW, WWE, or whatever, how they need to grow their audience. And they say, well, it's always the same people watching all these shows. It's not a new audience. It's not a different audience. It's always the same people. And that we need to grow our audience. And I say to myself, man, I'll say, okay, well, I think about wrestling this way. I think about all things that are niche. Wrestling is niche. It always has been. I think about things this way. I will never read a romance novel. There's nothing you can do to make me read a romance novel. I will never read it. I don't care who wrote it. I don't care what characters you put in it. You can put romance into a story that I have read, but you're not going to tell me that, I'm going to read a romance novel. If you produce it and sell it to me as a romance novel, I will not buy it. I will not watch it. I will not read it. So you have to look at that there are people who will not watch wrestling. It does not matter who is on the screen. It doesn't matter whether it's a match or a promo. It does not matter whether it's a vignette. It doesn't matter what it is. There are going to be a certain number of people who just do not like wrestling. And guess what? That is going to be the majority of the country. Just like, there are certain people who don't like comic books. No matter who's drawing it, no matter who's writing it, no matter what the story is about, if people don't like comic books, they're just not going to like comic books. It's the same thing with everything. When you are so concerned about people outside the bubble or outside the sphere of influence of people that you could control, that you just we need to grow. It's like, yeah, you need to grow, but you also need to shore up the people, the people that you have. Because there's, going to be a certain number of people who are going to watch live every week. There's going to be people who are going to say, I'm going to skip this episode and I'll watch pieces of it. I'll listen to somebody talk about it on YouTube, or I'll listen to, somebody do a podcast about it. I won't actually sit down and watch it myself. Or I may just watch the pay-per-views. I'm not going to watch the weekly show. There's people who do that. There's 100 different ways of consuming media. We need to just accept that. The idea of we're going to go out and try to get everybody needs to watch the show. And it's like, it's not going to happen, bro. It's not going to happen. It's a different world. Now, one of the things that I've been saying, I've heard a lot of people say this, specifically the guys who used to work at WCW, Disco Inferno and whatever that Mitchell guy is. I think his name is Bill Mitchell or whatever his name is. He's talking about, oh my goodness, there were 10 million people watching Nitro and Raw in 1999 or 2000 or whatever, and now it's like 2 million people watching it. Like that, where did all those people go? And my response is, where did the 33 million people who watched Andre and Hogan at Saturday Night Main Event in 1988 go? Where did all those people go? Where did those 33 million people go? It's like, well, they watched it because it was on TV. And at the time in 1988, it was pretty much one of the only things on TV. There was no cable. So when you had the proliferation of media, where now that there's cable, the numbers of people who cared to watch wrestling shrunk. And then you had streaming, all those different things. The people who cared to watch Raw live shrunk. That's just kind of how it works. When you look at the TV ratings of any type of show from the 1900s, especially the 1960s, 1970s, really, because in the 1950s, not everybody had a TV. In the 1960s, not everybody had TV. But those TV ratings were pretty big because there was only a few networks. Then you started seeing more networks show up. You started seeing ratings go down. The highest rated TV show in that era would go down. It would go from like 23 million to like 17. And then it would go down to again. And then it would go down again. And then it would kind of smooth out a little bit, because then you started having cable and all this different stuff. Like the highest rated shows on TV now are like the highest rated segment of anything that people watch is usually the Super Bowl, because that attracts people who don't even watch football. There's people who, they just watch that one game. They couldn't tell you who was on the team, but it's a cultural event. Everybody would sit down and watch football. Wrestling is not like that. It never has been. Wrestling has always been for people who just watched wrestling or who watched, shit TV. And there were people who like to watch shit TV. I mean, it's just kind of what it is. There were people who liked South Park. Where did all the people who liked South Park originally go? A lot of them grew up and grew out of it. Where did all the people who, liked Howard Stern, where did all those people go? Howard Stern isn't as big as he used to be. Penthouse and Playboy, all those. Playboy filed for bankruptcy, if I believe. Like, did they stop having men? No, it's like people found different ways of consuming fucking porn. They didn't have to buy Playboy magazines anymore. They didn't have to buy Penthouse magazines anymore. If you're black, then you probably know about King magazine, which was a big thing in the early 2000s. You had these black models, like Bria Miles. I mean, thick as mud. Jesus Christ. I used to go into I was old enough to buy those. And in like 2005, 2006, I was old enough to buy them. But I didn't really buy them a lot, though. Plus, you saw a lot of that stuff in the music videos. But you just see that that everything changed over time. Playboy was big again when there was no more access to porn. As porn became everywhere, you started seeing like the big porn houses and stuff like that started to shrink. There's still a lot of money to be made in porn, but now people can go make money on their own on OnlyFans. Now you can only make your own money, make your own porn if you wanted to. There are people who become, porn with their own husbands and stuff like that, and they do it on their own. Wrestling is sort of the same way. It's like, yeah, when wrestling was something that we thought only professionals did, it was a bigger deal. But now you have all these independents and backyard shows, and every idiot with a pair of limbs can go out there and do a moonsault and break his neck. You got what's that kid, Superhuman, who's just jumping off stuff and jumping through stuff, or brutalizing his own body, and he's got more followers than half of AEW's roster or something. And it's just ridiculous stuff. Like there is people who are consuming media differently. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but my point is, as they become more of something, there's more access to it, it's become valued less. Wrestling also has, of course, there's more wrestling on TV than ever before. But it says a lot. And I will say this as kind of the closing argument, is that if somebody's paying $45 million for AEW, $50 million for NXT, $200 million for Raw, who knows? I don't even know how much they're paying for SmackDown. And, Anthem thought to buy out Impact. And Sinclair still does show Ring of Honor. There is people who are willing to invest in wrestling, and that's a good thing. It's like, as long as TV networks and sponsors and all of them are willing to invest in wrestling, then wrestling is doing okay. They may struggle on pay-per-views, they may struggle streaming, it may struggle on TV, but as long as people are willing to invest in it by the millions and millions of dollars, it's doing okay. And I think we should stop worrying about TV ratings and where did all those people go. It's like, who knows? There's the people who dip in and dip out. There's people who are not interested at all, no matter what you do. And then there's going to be people who are, if you do something that they may like, they may tune in. But for the most part, who cares how many people watch on TV? We can't get back the 1988 off TV ratings, and we shouldn't be too concerned about it. It's a different world. We need to stop. But that's all, man. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.
I can paint the lawn with the sunrise.